Hello. I'm so excited to get this started. Just going to turn on my camera and we can get straight into it. Brilliant. Okay, nice. Let me know you can see me and the slides, and then we can go from there. You'll see at the bottom, or maybe it's the top of yours, the chat. And also you'll see the More tab where there's three dots. There's a chat there for the end if you want to put things into the Q&A. But throughout the whole training, oh great, thanks so much, Hannah. You can see me brilliant. And Sinead, great. Throughout the training, feel free to put in questions into the main chat, and then at the end we'll do a specific Q&A as well. So I am so delighted everyone is here. This has been a while in the making, and the last few months I've particularly seen so many women get back their sleep within the community. And I think there's a massive shift happening where people are realizing that female sleep is so different to the narrative that's been told to us like online and in generic sleep advice. So we're really going to dig into that today. And I want to make sure by the end of this, you have so much clarity on what to do for restorative sleep and what not to do. Because a lot of the things we're told to do are actually not that beneficial. And they're made on studies that were done on men. So this is going to bring a lot of it is very new research as well. So it's going to bring so much clarity. And I really wish I had this, especially around COVID when my sleep really went. Like I think that would have been my third time having real insomnia and getting, 2 to 4 hours a night. And I was doing all the sleep hygiene and all the things we're told to do for sleep, my good wind down routine, and I was not sleeping. And I knew at that point it's obviously much more focus needed on the female nervous system, but also understanding the whole sleep puzzle. So let's really, really get into that tonight. Okay, brilliant. Hopefully, if you're watching this now as well, you're open-minded tonight of looking for, this is obviously completely for you. So you're looking at yourself and what you really need. You're not going to need all of the sleep things I talk about. There might be one or two though that are transformative to your sleep. And at the end of the day, we cannot have restorative sleep without nervous system regulation. We can't have nervous system regulation without restorative sleep. So the two really go hand in hand and we're going to connect them. Okay, fabulous. A lot of you have asked as well. I have a community where I do this step by step. I'll talk about that later, but this training really is just understanding the nuances of female sleep. Okay, brilliant. So, just so you know, I have a background in this. I trained in my master's in health education in Maastricht University, and I did multiple courses in female regulation, circadian health, and perimenopause. So, what I do with my clients is usually all around regulation, and the result of that is sleep. So most people come to me knowing that they need better sleep, and we do that through a regulation lens. Okay, brilliant. Right. So if you are somebody that is really regularly waking up at 3 a.m. and you're very tired a lot of the day and you've tried a lot of things, this is absolutely for you. So usually people come to me and what I experienced is you're very wired before bedtime. There's like a second wind and you really need sugar or coffee before 2 p.m. You're experiencing the mood swings, the short fuse, the brain fog, everything we would associate with poor sleep. You've tried a lot of things and none of it has lasted. So if that's familiar, just, maybe pop a yes in the chat. So I know I can tailor this to you guys. Okay, brilliant. And also delighted to see all the different locations from Paris to New Zealand. Fantastic. Delighted to see that. It's so amazing to see all the different countries, Quebec as well. Brilliant. So that for me was a really frustrating scenario where I was actually doing all the things by the book. I was actually doing the lovely wind down routine. I was taking magnesium bisglycinate, I was taking ashwagandha, I was getting my morning light, I was doing all the generic sleep things. Okay. So if that is you, know that that's one piece of a much bigger female sleep puzzle. And that's what we're going to really get into properly. London as well, and Gort, great local person from Gort, lovely. Oregon, USA, Maine, lovely, fantastic. Okay, right. So this is what's possible because I think sometimes people think that this is just my lot. I'm never going to sleep again, especially if you're in perimenopause, you're in your 40s, 50s. You're thinking, is my sleep just like this now? Is it always going to be fragmented and poor? So this is people in my community that are in their, 35 to 75. Okay, across the board. This is the first month in over a decade I'm sleeping well. Take these in because this could be you saying this. I wake up with energy and don't grab coffee or sugar as a pick me up anymore. I amn't confused anymore. This is a big one. I know exactly what to do. There's no more throwing things at the wall and hoping they'll work. This is not fixed by melatonin or an earlier bedtime. This is fixed when the mechanism is finally addressed. We're putting the foundations in place now. Okay, so as I said, you've tried the melatonin, the ashwagandha, the magnesium bisglycinate, you're cutting out sugar and caffeine, meditation apps, breath work. Some things will help for a while and then you're back to square one. So why is that? Why for so many women are you very quickly pulled back to baseline? So you might get a few weeks of better sleep and then you slowly drift back. We're really going to understand later on about the progesterone piece as well, because that's really important. But for now, that's a question to ask yourself. What is happening that you're pulled back to the fragmented sleep, and thinking of your specific reasons as well? So it really isn't a sleep problem for 99% of women. It's a nervous system problem. Okay. I would have labeled myself as, a light sleeper, someone who just didn't sleep deeply. And I just thought that was my wiring, my genetics. But it really was the fact that my nervous system wasn't in a healthy state. And a lot of people will tell you nervous system regulation is just breath work, meditation, the very simplistic tools, which again is a very small amount of female regulation, which we'll get into. So every single approach you have addressed the output, not the entire system. Okay. So like when you're trying to get a solution for the broken sleep or the exhaustion or the belly fat or the anxiety, all the outputs of the same dysregulated nervous system. So the tools you've been given were not designed for your nervous system in the first place. We'll get into that in a while, but it's really fascinating that the majority of sleep research and studies up until the last 2 or 3 decades was mainly on men. They don't have a hormonal cycle. So it's really interesting. A lot of the things we try and are told to do is from that male narrative. So not designed for the female nervous system in the first place. Okay, so we're going to get into 5 key specific differences that are really going to make you go, aha, I really understand it now. Because for me, it was a massive mystery. I was trying everything and I wasn't achieving the good sleep. So why the typical methods don't work, why you have been stuck with trying, and we're going to simplify it. That is, if you know me, if you've worked with me before, if you follow me, I love simplification and really making this tangible instead of because who I work with, they're people that already know a lot of things. These women are not clueless by any means. They know a lot of what to do, but actioning it is a different story. And a lot of the reason you can't action it, and I'd love if you let me know in the chat if you resonate with that, is because of overwhelm. You know a lot of things to do, but you can't seem to action the steps in a methodological way because there's too many things to do and you're quite fried. A lot of the time, you're obviously spinning a lot of plates. Anyone I work with has multiple pressures. It's quite hard or easy to just drift back to the old and familiar, the nervous system and, loving the familiar health. So that's something to definitely understand, that it's not a discipline problem by any means. It's just the nervous system struggling to try new things because the lack of capacity. So what a key part of all this is getting more capacity. Okay, great. That makes sense. Okay, the next part of this, the tools, as I said earlier on, weren't built for you, but just to put that into perspective, in 1993, like just over 20 years ago, was the first law requiring women in clinical trials. That's mind-blowing stuff. Before that, the default was a 70-kilogram man. And, the nervous system device we have been given since we were very young is built on that model. And we're still seeing that narrative continuously because we haven't caught up with the new limited research we have. Okay, so, as well, I find this really interesting. The fight or flight research was almost entirely on male subjects. And the assumption is, that's a universal stress response. So we go to things like cold exposure, fasting, discipline-based tools are built on that foundation, very much male orientated. That's a mismatch, and it's very interesting to think that the assumption always is we're in fight or flight. And later we'll learn about more understanding tend and befriend, the default of the female nervous system state when we're under stress. Okay. So this is a study that came out in 2000 by Shelley Taylor in UCLA. And she talked about tend and befriend for the first time clearly. It's one of the most cited papers in stress research over the last 25 years. But we respond to stress differently to men. Okay. So when we're overwhelmed, we don't tend to want to fight or flee, fight or flight. We tend to, are young, we seek connection. We want to be around other people, we want to chat. It's quite a different stress response. And you hear more often about fawn as well for a similar reason. Because if you think about it, in historically, women would survive if they befriended people. They had the tribe. They don't want to flee their children. They stick around. So there's lots of reasons why tend and befriend and, people pleasing and feeling overwhelmed and really wanting to talk it out with people is more recognized in females than males. And that really, really interests me because it makes us understand why a lot of the things we're told to do for flight or flight, like, your cold exposure and your quick breath work, all them things, again, designed more for fight or flight. So very, very interesting. So, the pull towards your people, even when you have nothing left, is really that tend and befriend mechanism happening. And just understanding that is huge, absolutely huge. I love that as well. Jenna in the chat said Invisible Women is a great book. That's so true. It's so true. Hopefully the tide is turning. Okay, so let's get into the key differences so that you have real clarity in what's going to work and what isn't going to work for your sleep, and we'll really get into that. Okay, so very clearly, there's two clocks. Circadian rhythm is 24 hours. We all have that. Most wellness advice is been built on that. And then we have infradian rhythm, which is our 28-day cycle. Okay. Almost no wellness advice accounts for this when it comes to sleep. So we're just dealing with that 24-hour clock instead of building an infradian rhythm, which is amazing because we have very different sleep needs in the luteal phase, for example, versus the follicular phase, the start of your cycle. Think about when we have our period, there's more repair going on. We need more restorative sleep at that time. So we actually have different sleep needs across the month. That changes even more in perimenopause because you're more, it feels like you're stuck in the luteal phase more often. So that's actually such an important piece. My sleep routine is different every week of the month, slightly. I know I'm going to be warmer certain parts of the month. I know other parts of the month I'm going to be more tired. I know that my sleep for 1 or 2 nights is less because progesterone dropping at the end of my cycle, for example. All that is such valuable information. And I don't think a lot of people, and maybe I'm just because I'm in the space, it's now very normal for me, but I would probably imagine, and I would love to know in the chat, if many people account for that um, uh, within their sleep needs. If you're actually, and I know Hannah's a client, she does, and that's great to see, but really important to account for that, And also with menopause, post-menopause, that's a different rhythm as well, because progesterone and estrogen are lower levels. So understanding the sleep architecture in post-menopause is also very important, knowing that our sleep needs are different. So all of that information is out there, but it's very, very limited. And in perimenopause, especially, it's really, really, really incredible to see that like half of the global population is hopefully, going to go through perimenopause, not understanding what happens with the drop and fluctuation of progesterone and estrogen and how much that changes our sleep needs. We'll get into that a little bit more. So consistency maybe always feels like a battle. When you can't maintain it, you conclude it's a you problem. Like, why don't I have more discipline? Why can't I stick to these rules? That's a mismatch between the tool and your system. So understanding that was for me very, very eye-opening. And in my community, when people start to adopt the little changes and the daily action steps that are really simple, this becomes a lot less mentally overwhelming. So just bear that in mind. Things become a lot more clear when you know things like this about the way your cycle changes, about the things you should be doing at different parts of the cycle. So the second difference is in by no means are females weaker. It's just you're working without a safety net you didn't know you had. Okay, so what I'm talking about now is our progesterone piece. So for 30 years of your life, the first 30 years of your life, you have a built-in nervous system buffer running in the background. Okay, so you're more capacity, more resilient to stress. But in perimenopause, progesterone, that buffer is fluctuating, and then it declines into postmenopause. Okay. So it feels like you're falling apart. It feels like a new anxiety. It feels like very, very light sleep, a very fragmented sleep. But that is what's happening when progesterone is dropping. Okay. And then also we can see as well, estrogen supports your calming neurotransmitters. That's also in fluctuation and decline. So this, what we had the first 30 years was like working on the same pathways as anti-anxiety medication, and your body was just producing it, its own buffer every month without you knowing it. So we didn't really clock and acknowledge that that was happening, but then we had to acknowledge it when, you're moving into your 40s and you're noticing changes, especially in sleep, as a result of them hormones changing. Okay. So estrogen was supporting your calming neurotransmitters. Progesterone converts into that natural calmer in the brain. Okay. The body, as it produced its own buffer, we noticed that little changes, but it wasn't one day you notice your sleep go. It was very slow shift. That's why sometimes look back as 2020, but when you're in it, it's hard to recognize it because it's slow and it changes. But understanding what's happening with the decline of two hormones that are really involved in your sleep, really, really, because we know then we need to support them hormones. Okay. And especially with progesterone, all the nervous system regulation work for women, from your blood sugar balance to your mindset work to the food you eat, all of that is really important to keep these hormones at as good as levels as we can, as our body naturally, they decline naturally. Okay, so I'm going to check in with you now at this point. Any questions on this so far? Okay, because it's really kind of a really nuanced thing. Some people won't notice this change till their mid 40s. Some people will be mid 30s. Okay, so it's quite subjective. Okay, and also the question about infradian rhythm in perimenopause is an interesting one, because what we're trying to do is measure as best we can because there's less predictability. So, for example, some clients will take their basal temperature each day so they know when they ovulate, and they can then allow, they know that before ovulation is obviously the follicular part and after ovulation is luteal phase. Some months you might not ovulate, but it's piecing together that as best as you can, noticing the signs. So even if I wasn't tracking on the calendar or an app, I'd still have a pretty good idea now of, this is the time my energy is like this is the time my appetite's like this is when my sleep is like this. But as you go into perimenopause, you're just watching a little bit more closely for changes, especially with the ovulation piece, the temperature piece, and the sleep, to know where you are in the cycle. And that takes a little bit more planning. Okay, so as I said, the 3 a.m. wake up is not a sleep problem. Blood sugar drops as you sleep. Cortisol then is released to bring it back up. This happens really regularly to people who are regularly feeling stressed. And then you're wide awake at 3 a.m., your heart's pounding, your mind's racing, sense of dread. I used to have that in 2021. My twins were about around 1 at that point, but I would wake up every night, whether they woke me or not, in a sweat with my heart pounding. And that was happening for multiple reasons, but the main one because of I was very, very dysregulated and stressed. And what was happening with my blood sugars, they were dropping at 3 a.m. Cortisol would bring them back up, and then I'd fully wake. Okay. So, sleep hygiene isn't gonna do too much for that. That's the regulation piece. And yeah, do put into the chat if 3 a.m. is one of your main sleep issues, because for a lot of my community it is. It's the main one they come in with. Not so much trying to get to sleep, but trying to stay asleep past 3 a.m. or trying to get back to sleep after 3 a.m. is one of the biggest difficulties. Okay, yeah, it seems like quite a lot of people in there. Yeah, like 2 to 4 a.m. is usually when that blood sugar drop happens. So that's quite a big one. And just started happening, and I'm 45. That's quite common. It would happen, your early to mid 40s for the first time. Okay, so this is a really, really, really fascinating one that I don't think we associate with sleep very often. Your gut is running a loop nobody told you about. Okay, so we've heard that multiple times. Most of your feel good hormone, serotonin, 90% of that is produced in the gut, not the brain. So a group of gut bacteria whose entire job is to process estrogen is happening. Okay, but what's happening as we get past 35 and beyond is estrogen starts to fluctuate a bit. Then the process gets disrupted, and then you'll notice, because of your gut microbiome changing, it affects your mood, it affects your sleep, it affects how regulated your nervous system is. Okay. One thing that isn't often spoken about is the change of the gut in, past 35. And also, it's only very recent research that shows how connected the gut is, the condition of your gut to your sleep. So massive one that is very often extremely overlooked when it comes to sleep. Okay. Right. So let's take a pause for a moment. Did that surprise anyone, the gut piece? Because I know for me, when I think about, eating probiotic foods or eating my food more slowly, I don't really associate any of that with sleep. Um, but the gut brain axis, the bidirectional nature of it, is so important to pay attention to. I actually had a friend recently say that her partner was really, really struggling with sleep. And I just found it so interesting that the things that he was doing was just such generic sleep advice, but wasn't accounting for the real reason the sleep goes. For example, if you're really mentally overloaded, for example, if you're emotionally overloaded, all them things, you have to look at what the root cause is for it as well. Or it could be just hormonally what's happening, as we just spoke about. Okay. Very interesting what Louise said in the chat. On the gut piece, I recently had to take a very strong antibiotic, and sleep and mood were so badly affected. That is just such a perfect example. Thank you for sharing that of what happens when the gut microbiome gets disrupted. So, just building that up now with your probiotics and continue to eat mindfully and having more nutrients is just so important. And that's what we do in the community. We put such a focus on simple steps for gut health, constant reminders, because it is one of the key pieces of the regulation puzzle and the sleep puzzle. Okay, so our fourth difference then, you're regulating maybe a lot of other people's nervous systems around you. Okay, so very typical co-regulation, the nervous system regulate each other through presence. You're doing that with maybe your parents, your kids, your co-workers. Okay, like your child's nervous system looks to yours to assess safety. And of course, tend and befriend as well. It drives you to co-regulate everyone around you while your own stays elevated. So I had this conversation on a call the other day with clients, and we spoke about the mindset shift of how societally a lot of people would have always normalized that, and understanding how important it is to put boundaries in place so that you're not constantly regulating everyone else over yourself. And that's a bit of an interesting one to think about. But yeah, I would love if that resonated with anyone to know, because that's something that I was doing unbeknownst to myself. I wasn't even aware of it, that I was the last person, kind of pre-COVID, to get attention from myself. Everyone else around me got a lot more. Okay, so this is the weight nobody really acknowledges: the mental load, the emotional labor, the caregiving, the career, and your own health. We're at a time in history that we actually have so many plates spinning, more than ever before. And the nervous system wasn't really designed for that. It was designed for pressure, rest, pressure, rest. What's happening to us? Pressure. Okay, not designed for that. So your nervous system can't tell the difference between a work deadline, you know, making a dinner. They're all just little stressors. Both activate cortisol, both add to the weight. We're constantly in loops that aren't closed out. We're not closing the tabs. So every tool and every piece of advice that's told just to push through, that adds more weight to a system that's already at capacity. And now at this stage, I've worked with thousands of people, and so many people in the community come in with so little capacity. And that is the biggest thing. A lot of what we're asked to do, the new things to our to-do list we're supposed to do for our health, can be very stressful. So we have to pick very wisely what we're going to do for our sleep and health, because we're already extremely overloaded. So I think we're finally coming out of the period of time where people used to say, your morning routine needs to be 10 steps, your wind down routine needs to be 10 steps. We need to do all the skincare, we need to do journaling, we need to do meditation, breath work, ice baths. And it was like, wow, that's a lot of things. I'm already have a career, kids, blah, blah, blah. We have to simplify and make things so much easier to actually enact and carry out. Because right now, and I think you might be like myself, where you weren't even fully aware, maybe until I said it now, that you do have a massive to-do list of things you think you should be doing. But if you really look at that to-do list, do you really need to be doing them all? No, you probably need a few key things that are relevant to you, because so many people don't understand that nervous system regulation isn't a one size fits all. Really isn't. Um, Okay. And actually, fully enough, a lot of people I see are teachers that are really stressed out for because obviously there's so much mental load with that. So it's interesting what was said in the chat there, using gym training to help because of overwhelm. Yeah, lots of teachers there. And I was a teacher. I was a PE, maths, and geography teacher in secondary schools before COVID for, the decade nearly. And I found it just incredibly stressful in so many ways. Again, back to that tend and befriend, you're looking after so many people, nurses as well, absolutely, therapists, so many people that have really, really mentally draining roles. So this work is even more important. And you'll notice if owning a preschool like Marie, there's so many tabs open in your mind all the time. I mean, and your job alone is quite stressful in the nervous system, never mind all the other aspects of your life. So I think acknowledging that is important and understanding that we need to put things in place, like I do in the community all the time with people. We're constantly working through ways to create boundaries, to make sure our body has more positive deposits instead of withdrawals. And that's what it's all about. Okay, so this is our fifth difference. Okay, so the alarm has been recalibrated without us really knowing. Okay. So as the reproductive hormones decline, the stress threshold lowers. Okay. So it's interesting, you talk about like, oh my God, my husband is annoying me so much. Like you have a deep rage of things that used to not really annoy you. That rage that happens when you notice the progesterone dropping. Okay. Nothing has changed in your life, no new extra stressors, but things are irritating you a lot more deeply. Okay. So I think that's another one that's deeply important to acknowledge when it comes to sleep. Because if you're more triggered during the day because you have less capacity for stress, of course, in the evening, it's extremely hard to wind down. Really, really hard. You need clear decompression throughout the day so that it doesn't build up by the night. Another conversation we had the other day in the community of the importance of um, decompressing regularly throughout the day when our capacity is lower, so that we're not relying on this really great wind down routine to get the body out of tend and befriend, fight or flight, and into rest and digest. We've done breaks of rest and digest throughout the day. And that's way more important than people realize because of the way society is. People have normalized working at full capacity all the time. And that's why so many people come to me burnt out in early to late stages of burnout because the capacity isn't there. You're just living life like everyone else, but you're burnt out. It's because we've normalized the speed of life and the rush. And that's something that life will make you stop. You'll either get sick, your immune system will be down, or you'll have deep fatigue. Another conversation we had, the incredible amount of women who on a day-to-day basis are extremely tired. I put up a poll recently on my Instagram, so a few thousand people voted, and the poll was about fatigue. And I think it was nearly 90% of women that voted said majority of the time they're deeply tired. And that is so well, it's so frightening, first of all, but so not surprising because the speed we're all living our lives. And nervous system regulation is about acknowledging them things and about understanding that you have to break away from what's normal in society to have that regulated nervous system. Okay. And that's so true. What Bea said, the rush has been pushed upon us, no time to chill. Or if you do, you're kind of locked down on it. And that's really an interesting one that we talk about a lot. The guilt you feel when you rest. And when I say rest, I mean, spiritual rest, emotional rest, even, also physical rest. But there's lots of different types of rest we should be incorporating every day. Of course, we're not because of the way we're constantly in rush mode. So, you know, the guilt of what Sarah said is really interesting. The guilt when you pull back or do things for yourself. That's a big thing we work on in the community because I feel like that's a bigger part of regulation than we understand learning how to rest and create boundaries. Okay. So the loop. Why trying harder makes things worse? Ironically, the women who broke out of this, and all the women I see, they did not find more willpower or discipline by any means. They didn't get stricter and get a better routine, and they found a completely different approach. So we know now dysregulation leads to poor sleep, to higher cortisol levels in the body. Cortisol isn't bad. We just want balance levels. We don't want too high or too low. We want it to be in balance to get us up in the morning and allow us to sleep at night. Then we have lower capacity, more dysregulation, worse sleep. Okay. You cannot push your way out of that physiological loop, what's happening. Okay. We can't willpower our way into this great state of sleep. It doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. And that's what I tried to do for ages. And I see a lot of women come to me and say, but I've tried everything. I've taken the melatonin. I've taken this every supplement under the sun. I'm spending so much money on all these things. And actually, one, interestingly, went to a sleep consultant. And I was curious what the sleep consultant work on with her. And it was majority sleep hygiene and supplements, which really shocked me because she paid a lot of money and female sleep really needs all the pieces of the regulation puzzle. The sleep hygiene is like a small percentage. So if you come into the community, you'll see we work on all the pieces of the regulation puzzle, from the circadian piece to the mindset piece, to the boundaries, to the self-talk. There's so many, blood sugar as well, gut health. There's so many pieces to plug in that are so important for sleep, not just what the sleep consultant was giving, which was generic, the sleep advice made for mainly men. Really found that interesting. Okay, so what changes when women address the right thing? They did not find like a better supplement of the supplement they were already trying, or a better wind down routine. They found something built for how the body actually works. So one very clear daily action, as I said earlier on, we do not want to overwhelm. We want things already decided. We want it to be very seamless and for you to understand exactly what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. That's what I was missing. I did not have a community around me of women that were saying, oh, my sleep is really bad too. Oh, this is what I need. Oh, this is the next step. I was just in the dark, fending for myself, wondering, am I going to have another bout of insomnia after this? Not nice. And that feeling, I actually wanted to share this to you today because I looked at research on it recently. It's really interesting what happens in the brain at 3 a.m. You know, it's your darkest thoughts. Okay. So you're really irrational thoughts. Like I would really have panicked at 3 a.m. about things in my life. But then you wake up at 9 a.m. and they all seem a lot more manageable. It's what's happening with the brain at night. And that just made so much sense to me because you would catastrophize at 3 a.m. and you think I can problem solve that the next morning. So that's something that should give you comfort, but also having the awareness as well that, we talk about like cognitive reshuffling or counting sheep or progressive muscle relaxation, or all them techniques to get back to sleep at 3 a.m. But they can be helpful to get you back to sleep, but we want to look at the root cause. And for a lot of you, the root cause is working on the whole puzzle I mentioned of nervous system regulation. Okay. Okay, let me know this is making sense. Okay. And if you have any questions on it, feel free to put them in. And that's so true what Lindsay said. I think about how alone I am at 3 a.m. Everything seems so catastrophic at that time because of what's happening in the brain when it's the night. Yeah, it is shocking how many of us are so exhausted. If men had the same issues, the medical community would have the right support and solutions in place. Absolutely. And that's why everyone that's on this, I'm so glad, because you're taking matters into your own hands. Because a lot of things, it will be for the coming decades, will take some time for research and society to move towards female focused health. Okay. Okay, great. I'm really glad you're enjoying this. Brilliant. Okay. So again, to remind you that this is very possible. These people come in, some of them with very difficult circumstances, from caring for elderly parents to caring for children with additional needs to really, really stressful jobs to really big financial pressures. But they did overcome it by really looking at the regulation piece. So the first month in over a decade, I'm sleeping well. I can't believe it, if I'm honest. I feel completely different since I started sleeping. Of course, we know how we're completely different people when we're sleep deprived. I haven't had a 3 a.m. wake up in weeks now. I needed exactly this, to have one simple thing to focus on daily. It has been so much easier to do all this because I'm less self-critical. That's one big thing that is women need to work on for nervous system regulation, is that self-compassion piece. So this has been huge for me. A decade not fixed by melatonin or earlier bedtimes, fixed when we actually address the key part of sleep for women, which is the regulation piece. Okay. So again, going back to reminding you, it's very, very possible for you to wake up with energy in the morning. It may seem impossible now, but I've seen women with deep fatigue over weeks, not months, weeks, start to get great energy. So this is the first month in over a decade. I feel so much more energy, especially when I wake up and sleeping well. My sugar cravings are so much less. No more afternoon slump. I'm not fighting cravings anymore. That's a big one as well. The afternoon slump that happens because when you have a poor night's sleep, usually your energy dips in the afternoon, your cravings go up. Okay. And then clarity as well. I think that was one of probably the biggest things for me, the confusion. And at the time, I had spent quite a bit of money on different coaches and supplements, and I never came out of it knowing actually what was really needed at all. I was more confused than ever. So, as I said there, it's such a relief to know what to do, just the steps to know every day. My sugar cravings are so much less, no more chasing quick fixes since I understand the female nervous system. Not because they found more to read, because they just had clear daily actions, no more confusion. Okay, so I bet, like loads of my clients, you do not have an information problem at all. You're very, very well read. You looked at all the TikToks, Instagrams, even research papers, whatever way you're getting your information. You are not uninformed by any means. You've read the books, you've tried the protocols, you probably know way more about cortisol than the majority of people. So it's not information you need. There's a big difference between knowing and actually doing. And that is the sweet spot of the person I work with. They know, but they can't action it consistently because, of course, the nervous system has lower capacity because you're in overwhelm and rush. Okay, so that's really important just to have a moment of self compassion of why you might know a lot of the things to do, but you're not actually actioning them every day. That's not in any way to do. Willpower is just you're at capacity. Okay, so as I said earlier on, the community. We do not have reams of content, videos, modules, PDFs, okay? Deciding what to do. That's not what we want. We're in a society where we have an overload of information. I designed this for me 5 years ago. One daily action already decided for me. The structure is clear and I have people around me doing it with me. Really, really important. So this is built for women who do not have time to figure it out. You don't want to fumble anymore. So we have very clearly the most important part for me is for sure the community because there's so many women in there that are exactly in that scenario and have overcome it. We have the monthly live group coaching calls, the members library. When you do have capacity, there's a full library there of other 21-day challenges. Every month we do 21-day challenge in a specific piece of the nervous system regulation puzzle. So you know exactly what to do every day. There's a 2-minute video. You open it, you know exactly what to do. Okay, nothing to wade through at all. Nothing else to figure out, right? So I will back this so much because I've seen so many people get so much out of this that you do the first month, so the 21 days, you complete the daily actions. And if you don't benefit, just email me for a full refund, no questions asked. The risk is mine, not yours, because again, as I said, I've seen this be so beneficial for people and it's such a low cost. Again, because I want to help a lot of people at scale. I have a lot of people on social media, so I can do this. So I feel very grateful. So we have very simple pricing, €37 a month, or you can pay biannually or annually and just cancel anytime before your next billing date if you like. So that is how much I back this at this point. Going back to, if I can go back, do the first month and you get a full refund if you don't feel differently after doing the daily actions. Okay. So there's the link to join. There's one clear daily action. The community is there. You always have me and the community managers to ask questions to. You're not alone in this. You have support. That's really what's going to move the needle. You don't want to waste more time wading through all the different solutions. Okay. So you now know why nothing else is probably held and it was never a you problem. Maybe you don't have time to figure out more things. So if you want simplicity, this is definitely the place to go. I will put the link in the chat as well if you can't do the scan code. I hope that's right anyway, that link. Yeah. Okay. And as well, if anyone this resonated with, I would love if you took a picture now, share it to your stories. I would really, really appreciate that and I'll repost the story. But I really appreciate as well all the people that have chimed in with questions and just insight. It's really amazing to see that. I'm going to go into the main Q&A chat now. If you have specific questions, if I can get into this. Yeah, so if you click the three little buttons, 3 little dots, you'll see a Q&A. I'm going to now switch to that so I can answer specific questions in there. So I just turned 42 and my cycle recently started to be exhausting, painful, and short as 21 days. What's happening? I barely have 3 to 4 active days with some vitality. So there's a lot of things that, oh, sorry, I'll just move the, let me know if you can see the QR code. People are asking me to share it. Hopefully you can see it. And I've also put the link in the main chat. Yeah, so actually, just there on the question, I'll put the link in again in the chat there. We start on Monday a new 21-day challenge. We always start the start of the month. This month happens to be female sleep. So that piece of the regulation puzzle. So by joining now, you're getting in for that full sleep challenge. So that's the timing of this training as well. So people are ready to go into that. Okay, I'm just going to answer that question there. So cycles really start to be exhausting and painful. Definitely when you're in them scenarios and you have access to GP testing, it's important to see what's going on, especially if you're really floored with it, to see what's happening with the fluctuations is really important. Um, yeah, any loads of people in the community as well are on HRT. This complements HRT, just on Pam's question there. It's not a replacement for HRT, it works alongside it. Okay, recently diagnosed with hyperthyroidism. Will this help with staying asleep? So, a lot of things in the community work towards bettering thyroid health because obviously, for thyroid health, we want better blood sugar balance, we want better sleep, we want to be able to rest more and regulate more. That's all key for helping regulate the thyroid. So, it does, a lot of people in the community are either hypo, well, a lot more hypo and some hyper as well, but really helpful when you're focusing on regulation because that's helping with thyroid health. Okay. I want to come off sleeping tablets permanently post-menopausal, and that's what we're always working towards. A lot of people come in on anti-anxiety medication or sleep medication, and what trying to do is not, well, some of them in the long term are trying to come off them, of course, but we're trying to work in improving your sleep in the best way possible so that you're not so reliant on them. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at two chats here. You see, when I put into the, I'll just keep posting it into the chat because I put it in and then people comment and then the link gets lost up. So I'm just going to paste it in there again so you see it. There we go. So with as well the phases, just asked there by Sarah, how do we know what phase we're in? And I do every week as well, I do a Q&A and every month there's a live call. So whenever you have questions like that, feel free to ask in the community or every day on the wall. You can ask questions like that, like about HRT, like about the hyperthyroid like about the phases you're in. That's a part of this community that you have access to me and my team's knowledge. And that's a big thing where host and panelists, everyone. Okay, there we go. Suffering with 3 a.m. wake ups for years have really improved my sleep by working on my stress and self-talk from January. Got pregnant at the start of June, congrats, and have found I'm up every night again. Do you think this could help, or is sleep just going to be worse during pregnancy? I actually have a good few pregnant people in the community, but also my other program as well. And this was something I struggled with in my own pregnancy. And it's interesting, when you're pregnant, your mind is moving in a lot of directions because you're predicting the future and there's a lot more worries happening. So obviously we're working on regulation. So usually that amounts to your sleep is better because you're feeling more calm. So yeah, I would think that would help. And just in general, setting up for um, a good pregnancy, and it's really important to really double down on regulation and all the pieces of regulation I speak about, from the circadian health to the blood sugar balance to the gut health to the mindset work. Okay. Yeah, and just here's the link again. How to help boost progesterone naturally to keep you balanced. That's exactly the main thing to help improve progesterone production and keep it more balanced without it dropping too far is exactly what I'm speaking about today. It's the nervous system regulation piece. We overly rely on progesterone with, oh, we need to eat progesterone boosting foods. Yes, that's important. But progesterone is very much linked to the nervous system. So that's everything I do in the community. It's towards progesterone production because progesterone is our calming hormone. It's directly tied to having a regulated nervous system. And yes, just the question there, does your plan also deal with food? Because part of the nervous system regulation puzzle is blood sugar balance, it's very tied to how regulated you are and is gut health. So there's months where we move through a challenge that's specifically around them. So a lot of what I do, and as well, as I said, on a day-to-day basis, you can ask about any of the questions from the nervous system regulation puzzle, and me and the team will answer your questions. Okay, brilliant. We're almost coming up to the 45-minute mark. And I'll just get one more in. And also, as I said, please feel free to share this on your stories. After this, if you have specific questions I didn't get through, because there's a lot of questions, please message me on my Instagram, Health with Holland Instagram, and I'll get back to as many as I can. Okay. And this is an interesting one. So the week to 10 days before my period starts is hell week for me. Insomnia is awful. I can't sleep until 5 or 6 in the morning, subsequent nervous system chaos and mood swings. Once my period starts, I feel more balanced and can usually fall asleep within an hour. After my period ends, the struggle to fall asleep starts again, but usually not more than an hour or two. I do struggle with 2 to 4 a.m. wake ups on occasion, and most noticeably when I'm more stressed. How can I start to help the hell week? There's multiple things to look at in that. What's happening with estrogen and progesterone? What's happening with your day-to-day life? Is there decompression moments? What's happening with your food, the blood sugar balance piece, the gut piece? There's a lot of piecing together in this to understand where you are with that. I definitely couldn't give a specific answer to that because there's multiple reasons that that might be happening. Also, PMDD, understanding is there something going on there that's in line with PMDD as well. That's something to you can feel free to message me as well on Instagram if you want about that. Okay, I'm going to wind this up as we've just hit the 45 minutes and I'm very conscious of your time because you did so well to get in a live call. I know myself, it's very hard to actually get on lives because of all the things going on. And as we talked about, the overwhelm and spitting so many plates. So thank you so much for coming on this. I would love to see you in the community if it resonates with you. If not, no pressure whatsoever. I hope you got a lot out of this, regardless if you're coming into the community or not. I really, really appreciate your time. And just know that even tonight, if nothing else, what would be so great is if you understood that it's there's overemphasis on sleep hygiene and there's underemphasis on nervous system regulation when it comes to female sleep. So do with that what you will. But I appreciate your time so much. Thank you so much, everyone. And hopefully I'll either chat to you in my DMs on Instagram or in the community in the Rebalance membership. Okay. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll chat soon.